everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Composer Tea. My name is Miss Sperotto, your host for today, and this is Kitty, who does nothing. He does nothing, but we love him. Today we're going to be talking about Antonio Vivaldi, and he is also known as the Red Priest, and that's because he had red hair and he was a priest. He was a very inventive and prolific writer during his time, and we know of about 500 compositions that he wrote. It's a lot. He's also known for extending the technique and the virtuosity of the violin. His most famous work that I would say, and we're going to be talking about it today, is his Four Seasons. We're not going to talk about all 500 of them. We got to keep this short. But let's talk a little bit about this man's childhood. He was born in 1678 in Venice, and at the time he was born, Venice was like the musical center of Europe. That's where you went if you wanted some musical stuff. Now, when I talk about Vivaldi for this video, there are just gonna be some things, and we don't know them, because 1678, according to my math, I'm not very good at math, was 342 years ago. That's a lot of years. So really, this is awesome that we know anything about this man's life, that we have so many details. So let's take that with a grain of salt when we talk about this, shall we? Here's what we do know about his early life. There is some tea on his birth. Whew, it's hot. By the way, I'm drinking a pomegranate cranberry green tea. It kind of tastes like soap. I think it smells better than it actually tastes. Birth tea. Birth tea? Yeah, we're gonna go with that. He was born at home. I mean, this is like almost 350 years ago. A lot of people were born at home then. But he was like immediately baptized, which was not normal for the time. And it's also not normal for this time for people who choose to be baptized, or parents who choose to baptize their children anyways. Why? No. Stay. Like, what's the deal with that? Like, why would you do that? It's been documented that they believed his life was in danger, like the moment he was born. And historians aren't really sure, like, okay, what was this danger? But they do know a couple things. They're pretty sure he was born prematurely, which can be dangerous. We also know that he was pretty sickly all his life. So there's that. Also, on the day he was born in Venice, there was a major earthquake. They think like between these two different things, which one of them was like definitely, okay, I can see you wanting to do that, and the other one was maybe a little superstitious, who knows. Mom went ahead and made the executive decision, our child is being baptized right now. So he was baptized at home like almost immediately after birth. There is also evidence that his mom may have went ahead and dedicated him to the priesthood day one. Be like, if you let our child live, he will devote his life to you, God. These are wishy-washy facts we have. Again, 350 years ago. So the fact that we even have wishy-washy facts, I'll take it. That's literally the only thing I know about his mom, was the day he was born. Anything else, I don't really know. I know a bit about his dad, though. His dad started out as a barber, and then eventually he went on to become a professional violinist, and he played in his local orchestra. He taught Vivaldi, Antonio, how to play violin. So he was his first teacher, and I think his only teacher, which kind of makes me wonder, like, whoa, was Vivaldi's dad like really good? But I do know that the two of them, they kind of toured around Venice, just the city of Venice. It wasn't like other fathers in history did to their musical children. Mozart. Oh, excuse me. It happens. We also think that he started learning the violin at a really early age because the extent of his knowledge that he had later on as a older teenager and a young adult was a lot. So he had a lot of experience at that time, which tells historians he must have started learning a long time ago. Growing up, Vivaldi's health was not always the greatest. He would often complain about tightness in his chest, and it's kind of translated today as he probably had asthma, and we don't know any other extent of that other than he was sick a lot, and that is something he complained about his entire life. He did have trouble learning. Dude, stay paying you by the hour. He did have trouble learning wind instruments. He had trouble breathing and sustaining a breath long enough to support the tone of those instruments. And as someone who has asthma, I can imagine it being really awful back then because they didn't have the information or the medications they have today for people who have asthma. So like, it's not like, oh, I need to practice my fill in the blank wind instrument and I need to use my inhaler before I use that, and then I'll be okay. He didn't have that option, and if his asthma was really that bad, he was probably really uncomfortable. This also kind of makes me wonder, this is just Sperotto thinking the way I do. I wonder if he was like an inside child because of it. Was he also one of those kinds of kids who's like, I don't like running. Please don't make me get sweaty. I'm sorry, I don't play team sports. Like, that's something I actually wonder because of that. Was he a kid who got out a lot, or is he literally just one of those kids that are like, I just do this one thing and I can do it really well, only because physically it was uncomfortable to do those things. It's just a thought I've had. When he was 15, his family made him go into priesthood. They made him become a priest, and it took him 10 years to finish that. Now, I had to look this up because I'm not able to become a priest even if I wanted to. But it actually, on average, takes someone about 5 years to become a priest, which also makes historians wonder, did it really just take you 10 years to do this? Or did you really not want to do this? There's also different things along in his life that kind of point to that, and we'll discuss those later. There's also, you've been warned once or twice. There's also accounts of him, once he did become a priest, doing the mass, that he had to kind of stop doing all those priest jobs within the Catholic Church where he was doing his job because he couldn't say the mass and sing the mass because of the tightness in his chest. His asthma was so bad that he told everyone, I'm sorry, this is preventing me from doing this. But another thing that points to this, of maybe he just didn't actually want to do it, is he would go off and he would just be composing. And there's several different accounts of him doing that several different times. It's like, instead of being present in these services and ceremonies, it would be, where's Vivaldi? I don't know. Oh, I just saw him. He's in the other room. He's composing something. So you tell me, what's the deal here? Dude! Okay, just go. You can go. You can go. I think he's angry now. He also, it has been noted, never had any problems conducting his orchestras, which does take some physical exertion. There's also accounts of people supporting that, saying No, he was completely devoted. He always had a rosary in his hand. Again, this is 350-year-old information. When he was 25, at this point, he was a pretty accomplished violinist and composer. He took a job at the Pieta. I think I'm saying that correctly. Not entirely sure. Kind of a bad Italian in that way. The Pieta was an orphanage for girls. However, the Pieta was very well known for like its excellent orchestra and its excellent choir. And this orchestra and choir was composed of the girls from this orphanage. So they were musically trained, and then they would play in the or sing in these groups. So this orphanage decided, we're going to teach these girls music because this is an acceptable thing for a lady to learn at the time. Remember, women didn't have jobs outside of being a mother and a housewife. And if these girls do not go on and get married, it's going to be okay because they at least have a skill that is okay if you're a woman at the time, and they could actually still support themselves making music. That was the rationale of this orphanage. Luckily for these girls, they were fantastic. They were very well-trained musicians. And I think they were actually still pretty good even before Vivaldi got there. Vivaldi just made it better, like really good. And the orphanage thought that Vivaldi would be a good choice when they first hired him because they're like, hey, he's a dude, but he's a priest. We're good. So his job while he was at this orphanage, the Pieta, he was the music director, and he had to teach them how to play their instruments, teach them music theory, and then direct and conduct these concerts. So essentially he was an orchestra teacher in a way. However, when he first started this job, the board of directors for this orphanage, they weren't exactly a fan of his. Every year, this board of directors, they would vote on these new faculty and are we going to keep them, are we not? And his was never a unanimous vote. It was always like 50-50. Half of them were like, get him out of here. And the other half of them were like, he has done fantastic work. So there was one year, because he was there like on and off, and he decided, I'm going to take a year off. I think I need to do some other stuff and just do some freelance work for a little bit. And it was so evident this orphanage actually needed him for this orchestra and chorus program that they not only asked him to come back, but they actually gave him a raise and a promotion because they wanted him to stay. That tells me that he was probably an excellent teacher. I want Vivaldi as a teacher. He did come on and off as faculty and come and go because he did explore some other things within his musical career, but that is something that he did for a very long time. It was during this time that he wrote probably his most famous work, which is called The Four Seasons. We're gonna talk about that. I don't know, it's kind of growing on me. It's like, now that it's cooled down, it's a little better. It's almost like if an air freshener was a tea. Anyways, Four Seasons. This is a piece that is still very popular today, and it is played all the time. So, Four Seasons has been something audiences have always loved. It's very approachable. Like, even if you're not really into classical music, you're really like, you can still enjoy it. It's light. It's still popular, I think, because of that reason. So the Four Seasons is a series of 4 violin concertos, like 4 separate compositions. And for each season is a composition, hence the title. Each composition has 3 movements in it. Usually it's like a fast, slow, fast kind of a situation. For those of you who don't know, a concerto is a type of musical form where there's a soloist and the soloist plays with an orchestra accompanying them. And it doesn't have to be just for violin, it could literally be with any kind of instrument. This type of composition was perfect for Vivaldi because not only was he a fantastic violinist, but being at this orphanage, he probably had all these different girls who could probably play this music very well at his disposal. And he had this orchestra that was awesome. This worked out really well for him, and he was able to perform it frequently because of that. This was also music kind of before its time without him even realizing it. This was actually one of the first pieces of program music. And if you watched episode 2 with Hector Berlioz, then you would have learned that program music is music that kind of tells a story or a narrative in a way. However, program music didn't become popular until the Romantic era. So that's like 1830 is when the Romantic era officially started. So I'm thinking composers like Hector Berlioz or Franz Liszt or Richard Strauss. That's just what I think of because they were heavy program music writers. But in the Baroque and classical era, that wasn't really a thing. There's a few spattering of pieces every now and then, but it wasn't, you just didn't find it. So the fact that Vivaldi wrote this 100 years before this is kind of cool. So the story it tells, it is not weird. Thank goodness. It's actually different sonnets about each season. There's a sonnet that goes with each movement that kind of tells the listener what's going on within that movement. They're actually quite charming. So the first one that he wrote was the Spring. And for the first movement, he wrote, "Springtime is upon us. The birds celebrate her return with festive song, and murmuring streams are softly caressed by the breezes. Thunderstorms whose heralds of spring roar, casting their dark mantle over heaven. Then they die away to silence, and the birds take up their charming songs once more." This is actually a pretty popular movement. You've heard that before. Then the next movement from Spring is, "On the flower-strewn meadow, with leafy branches rustling overhead, the goatherd sleeps, and his faithful dog beside him." It's kind of sleepy. Then the last movement of Spring is fast again, and it says, "Led by the festive sound of rustic bagpipes, nymphs and shepherds lightly dance beneath the brilliant canopy of spring." Yeah, it sounds like a dance. So that is spring. Summer, which is the next season, in case you haven't figured that out. The first movement says, "Under a hard season, fired by the sun, languishes man, languishes the flock, and burns the pine." It's really hot. "We hear the cuckoo's voice, then sweet songs of the turtle dove and the finch are heard. Soft breezes stir the air, but threatening the north wind sweeps them suddenly aside. The shepherd trembles, fearing violent storms and his fate." Sounds intense. The next movement's slower. "The fear of lightning and fierce thunder robs his tired limbs of rest as gnats and flies buzz furiously around." He wrote about bugs. I actually think that movement's really pretty. And then it goes fast again. "Alas, his fears were justified. The heavens thunder and roar, and with hail cut the head off the wheat and damages the grain." This is actually my favorite movement from the summer. You've heard that one before, I know you have. For the next season, it's autumn. His first movement says, celebrates the peasant with songs and dances, the pleasure of a bountiful harvest, and fired up by Bacchus's liquor, many end their revelry in sleep. I remember when I was a freshman in high school, my orchestra teacher at the time had decided we're going to play this at our fall concert. And at the time, I was concertmaster of that orchestra, and he said, hey Celia, you're going to play this. And I did not want to, and I had no business playing it. I still had to. Second movement. Everyone is made to forget their cares and to sing and dance, by the air which is tempered with pleasure, and by the season that invites so many, many out of their sweetest slumber to find enjoyment. And then the last movement, the hunters emerge at a new dawn, with horns and dogs and guns depart on their hunting. The beast flees as they follow its trail. Terrified and tired of the great noise of guns and dogs, the beast, wounded, threatens languidly to flee, but harried, dies. Basically, they're hunting. Pretty popular one. Which brings us to the last season that we have, winter. To tremble from cold and the icy snow, and the harsh breath of horrid wind, to run stamping one's feet at every moment, our teeth chattering in the extreme cold. I love that movement. Second movement. Before the fire to pass peaceful, contented days while the rain outside pours down. I've had to play this one so many times. Literally, like every wedding I've ever been hired to play at, I have to play that one. And the very last one, we tread the icy path slowly and cautiously, for fear of tripping and falling. Then fear abruptly slip and crash on the ground, and rising hasten on across the ice lest it cracks up. We feel the chill north winds course through the home despite the locked and bolted doors. This is winter, which nonetheless brings its own delights. Luckily, this isn't anything that's salacious or terrifying or a weird story that I've told you, but I actually think this is really nice that he was able to put poetry to these songs. Historians aren't 100% sure, but they're pretty sure that Vivaldi is the one who also wrote that poetry. The other thing was Vivaldi got very into writing operas. He definitely wrote a lot of them. From 1713 to 1739, he wrote 94 operas. That's a lot! Some of these compositions though, these operas, they're still lost. So we have like written accounts from other people like, oh, I went to go see this opera by Vivaldi. Maybe someone wrote a review on a particular opera and there is a newspaper clipping of it. So we have that kind of information, but we don't have the actual music anymore. And we will talk about that towards the end of the video. As of right now, there are about 50 actual compositions that we have of his, of the 94. That's a lot of music that's missing. Some of these, we only have a small portion of that opera. So maybe there's an opera, but we only have one song from it. Or maybe we have one act, but we don't have the other one. Some of them, we have the entire thing. However, these operas that he wrote, even though he wrote like a bajillion of them, they're rarely performed today. People went to them, but I'm not entirely sold that everyone enjoyed them. Maybe that's why I had to write so many. He also wasn't able to keep his operas running in the opera houses long enough to have them there for a while. Think of modern day Broadway. We have shows that have been playing on Broadway for a very long time. Years. His didn't go for years. They went for weeks, months. Also, if you're a business owner, which he was not, and you have an opera house, if something's not working, you're going to get another show in there as fast as you can, because if people are not coming to the opera house and buying tickets, you're out of money. So you're going to get a new show in there so that people are actually buying tickets and their butts are in the seats. It's just a business thing. However, with these operas, I also have some opera tea for you. We can't go through this episode without a little bit of a scandal. Okay, while he was writing all these operas, he found a soprano soloist that he really liked and worked really well with. Her name was Allegro. I might be mispronouncing her name. I probably am. And Vivaldi would write parts just for Anna based on her vocal strengths. He liked working with her. He liked her voice. He thought she was really nice. It worked out. And he's not the first composer in history to do something like that. This was not uncommon throughout music history. At one point, though, he invited Anna and her sister, Paulina, to come live with him. So Anna and him would work together on whatever operas or music is going on so she can practice these parts and he can hear what they sound like. And Paulina served the role as his nurse because remember, he was like sick all the time. However, the word on the street was that Anna and him were a thing, a couple, in love. This is kind of a problem when you're a Catholic priest. You're definitely not allowed to do stuff if that's your job. So most people didn't really care though. They're like, not my business. But some people had some beef with this. There's at one point, Vivaldi was getting ready to premiere one of his operas, and Anna was in it, and it was in the town of Ferrara in Italy. Well, the Cardinal of Ferrara, he was not okay with this. And he was all like, no, you are a man of the cloth. This lady and her sister are living with you. There's rumors, and I'm not okay with it. So he basically said, like, I forbade you to show this opera in my town. I forbade you to conduct it, and I forbade Anna to be in it. Now, Vivaldi denied everything. He was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And he was actually really upset that comments like this were being made about these sisters. He was like, this is not what this looks like. But in the end, the opera did go on, but Vivaldi wasn't in it and Anna was not in it. So, which makes you wonder, like, was there actually a romantic relationship there between Vivaldi and one of these sisters, if not both of these sisters? I don't know. This is my personal opinion on this. I don't think we have enough information. This was like 300 years ago. We do know that Vivaldi never married, and we do know that at times it was not always uncommon for women to come live with men that were not necessarily their husbands and did not have a romantic relationship with. Sometimes people needed caretakers, and maybe Anna and her sister filled that role. Maybe Anna also took care of the house and whatever needed to be done in the house, and Paulina was his nurse. That's totally possible. Again, because there are other accounts of Vivaldi being very devout, I don't think anything happened. I do think that he found true friendship with Anna and Paulina, and he found someone to help take care of him. Personally, I think that's where that ended. I still think it's amazing that we have like ancient tea, 300-year-old tea. Of course, that's just my opinion. So Vivaldi's getting older now, and it wasn't just that last opera that was flopping. He was having a lot of flops. And he was about in his 60s or so, and he was like, I think I need to get out of Italy. And he decided that because his music was kind of becoming out of favor. It was getting to be unpopular. And that's just a musical trend. This has happened in our society many times over. Actually, because everything in our society now is so much faster, and that's because of the internet, and that's because of all these technological advances we've had since his time. Things become unpopular faster now than they did back then. So literally, in our time, a song that you could hear on the radio could be cool 1 month, and the next month, it's not cool anymore. Same exact thing happened back then. It just took a little longer. So he was just becoming a little unpopular in Italy. Happens. However, up in Vienna, he still had some people that were followers of him. So he thought it would be a good idea for him and the two sisters to go live up in Vienna, where he might be able to get a little bit more of a profit. Because if you're not working and your stuff is flopping, you're not making money. So he and the Giro sisters, they go move up to Vienna. However, it wasn't the best. He was still struggling to make ends meet. So what he would do was take his compositions that he had spent so much time making through his lifetime, and he was selling them off, movement by movement, piece by piece, which is actually kind of a problem. Not too long after this, he actually died of internal inflammation. I'm not sure what that means. He should have followed a gluten-free diet. Because he didn't have a lot of money, he actually had a pauper's funeral. So basically a funeral if you don't have a lot of money, like the bare budget kind of funeral. However, we do know where he's buried. This is not a Mozart situation. Y'all know that story. So let's fast forward to modern times, because his story's not over. Because he sold off so much of his work when he wasn't really that popular anymore, we don't know what happened to it because his stuff wasn't really published back then. So it wasn't until the 1920s when Vivaldi's works had like a resurgence in the musical world, and we still don't know where all of this stuff is. What if there's more than 500 compositions? What if it's 600? We do know that the last time one of his pieces was uncovered was in 2006. So maybe we're due for another Vivaldi discovery. But if it wasn't for that discovery in the 1920s, we probably wouldn't know anything about his stuff. And we would not be playing his things today. So let's wrap this up. Vivaldi was a prolific composer overall. He was a virtuoso violinist, he was inventive for his time, and he had red hair. That's not really that important, but he is the only composer I know of that has red hair. Before I close out this section, I am considering firing my co-host. I don't know where he went. Don't know where he is. So, good job, kitty. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Composer Tea, where we spilled the tea on the life of Antonio Vivaldi. Have a nice week. Bye.